Tonight I have a friend on from church, Charissa Fryberger. She's an educator, a author, world traveler, and part-time missionary.
And I read her book, and it's good.
So tonight on the third chair, I'm still Peter. I checked my ID. That's Doug, and we're here with our special guest, Charissa Fryberger. Charissa, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
And as we mentioned in the introduction, you've led a pretty amazing life. Educator, artist, writer, world traveler, drinker of Czechoslovakian beer. Well, at least you tried it. Yeah, a little sip. Yeah, and
so a strange drink a Christmas drink from Czechoslovakia.
Some type of Czechoslovakian liqueur that tastes like Christmas.
Tastes like Christmas.
It makes me think, like, would it be like a peppermint schnapps or something? I don't know.
It's not minty. It just tastes like Christmas smells. It's like sweet Christmas
like
trees.
Pines sweet Christmas.
Wow.
I can't give it a flavor that's a flavor, just a scent.
Well, nice.
Now I want to go to Czechoslovakia.
I want to go to Czechoslovakia.
Sit on one of those restaurants outside because I like outside restaurants.
Yeah.
And I say, I want the Christmas liqueur that smells like sweet Christmas. That tastes like sweet Christmas trees.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So, Charissa, let's ask a little bit about your educational background. I know you've done at least 7 or 8 degrees, or how many? Tell us about your educational background.
My first degree was political science.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did 2 years at a junior college in northern Wyoming.
Northern Wyoming.
Where I was political science, but really, more than anything, did speech and debate.
So how did you end up in northern Wyoming?
I was kind of first generation college, and people had told me for years that I belonged at Harvard or whatever. I was a pretty good student. Mm-hmm. And so part of me just assumed that would happen, and nobody ever sat me down and told me that meant I needed to take the SAT, that I needed to come up with scholarship money. I didn't know. And somewhere in the middle of my senior year, I kind of absently looked up Harvard and went, oh my goodness, how much does that cost? And started scrambling, and I was definitely behind the ball. But I had a couple of cousins who had been to this little junior college near Yellowstone Park.
Oh, wow.
And they had been debaters there. And so they recommended me to the debate coach there, who then offered me a debate scholarship. So I ended up there to do speech and debate.
So were you able to sneak to the parks on some weekends?
I actually never went into the park at the time. I was on a shoestring, and I couldn't afford to go in the park.
Oh,
but we hiked around the area. After that, I knew then that I needed money, and I started looking for scholarship money because it was a 2-year college. If I was going to finish, I had to go somewhere else.
Right.
And eventually found a application for the Truman Scholarship, which they said people from little towns in Wyoming don't win this. But we went through the process, and I did, which brought me to Colorado College.
To Colorado College. Yet another cheap university.
I had some scholarship.
I was going to say, Colorado College is still up there in a tuition.
My wife worked there for a year, and then she went back to her old job, and then my brother-in-law worked there, and we used to joke that you have to, because if your parent works there, you can get free to not only Colorado College, but some other sister schools. Mm-hmm. And
that's a nice perk.
Yeah, and my brother-in-law worked there, and we were joking, when she's 12, we're sending her to your house so she can go to one of those schools free. And he said, no, you're not.
So you studied debate. Do you ever find yourself like debating your husband?
My husband's a debater too.
There's
got to be some interesting
action around the Christmas table, around the kitchen table.
Sometimes he goes, I know what you're doing.
I did political science, specializing in Eastern Europe. And studied Russian at Colorado College. And then I was going to go to law school. And I went out to California to work a year to get money and apply and all that for law school. it really came. I was living with law students and decided that I would love law school because it was a game like debate,
Yeah.
but that I would hate being an attorney, and I didn't know what to do. And at the time, I was helping with the debate team at Pepperdine University, and I was at a tournament with them, and my coach from Colorado College and I had breakfast, and I kind of explained to him that I was kind of stuck. I was all set up to go to law school, but it kind of decided I didn't really want to do that, but I thought I was going to have to do it anyway. And he said, well, why don't you get a master's degree and coach full time? And I said, well, I can't. I took the LSAT, not the GRE. I'm all set up. The scholarship money's there. I think I have to go to law school. And 45 minutes later, the coach from the University of Wyoming came down from the tab room, having talked to him, and offered me a graduate assistantship at Wyoming and just waived all the GRE and everything.
Oh, wow.
So you went to Laramie.
So I went to Laramie.
Yeah, and so
My daughter graduated from University of Wyoming. Let's see, 2020. During
I was
COVID.
years before that.
yeah. I didn't think you saw her on campus.
And so, was that when you studied English as well?
No, I didn't finish that grad degree. We tease that I got a graduate MRS degree. I met my husband at Laramie and didn't finish. And then we went away, and we actually lived in our car for the first 5 or 6 months that we were married. Because
You lived in your car. Boy, what a honeymoon.
it was so cool.
So what did you do?
He graduated, I didn't finish, and we just put everything in storage and got in my Datsun. I had a husky Timberwolf who rode in the back seat with a cooler, and we hiked mountain ranges. And when we'd run out of money, we'd stop and work somewhere.
So where did you go in all this?
We started out south and went down through Tennessee, Alabama, to Florida. Neither of us had ever been to Disney World, so we were kind of pointed at that to start with. Eventually, then we had to come back. He was supposed to be in a wedding back in Wyoming, so we hightailed it back there. And then we went up into Oregon, Washington, and then into Canada, and just lived in our tent.
So you went all across the USA. So
With a husky Timberwolf. Is that like a cross between a wolf and a husky?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she was my buddy, and
She's a little protection.
she had to approve David before I married him.
Yeah, I preparing for this.
I bet she loved the trip.
Preparing for this filming, I said, did your husband ever do like any kind of mountain climbing pickup lines on you, like relationship before relationship, like on belay? Did he do anything like that?
I hope he didn't use that line. I have respect for the guy.
Yeah. It never worked for me either.
Oh, you tried that line?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I was pretty desperate.
how did you do that with Rhonda is what I want to know.
I ordered her online. No, she ordered me online. I was from out of the country. Just like the old Wild Wild West and ordering a bride. Only she ordered a groom. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and then some period of time passed and you went back and you did a master's in English.
Not until after my children.
So
we settled, and I ended up having 4 children. I homeschooled them, so that pretty much means that my life was kids for 25 years. And when that finished, I'd also been homeschooling other people's children. So I taught when my kids started getting into junior high and all, and I realized that among the other homeschool moms around me, there was a lot of fear about homeschooling high school. And so I started offering high school classes. I taught speech and debate and traveled a speech and debate team all over the country that was homeschool kids. And then I taught a literature, history, philosophy, writing combination that I did with all of them. So I was teaching for nothing for all of those years. And so, that was fine. But when we were finished, David said, I need you to get a job that has a paycheck.
Sure, yeah.
And we decided that I needed to finish my master's work to do that.
So you went to college and spent more money.
Not exactly. I had a graduate assistantship. So basically, in exchange for teaching undergraduate classes for the college, they paid my tuition.
Oh, that's great.
So I was at Clemson University for a couple of years. So that was late. I graduated in 2019 with a master's degree in English literature.
So we can talk about Clemson when we get back.
Clemson, yeah. Is that the red tide of Clemson? No.
Clemson, go Tigers!
Oh, the Clemson Tigers, yeah. I was going to say Husky
They're
Wolf.
orange.
We will continue a discussion about some place named Clemson when we come right back. Welcome back to the third chair. I'm Peter, and I definitely, via this camera, look better than my driver's license picture. That is Doug, and we're here with our special guest, Charissa Fryberger. Charissa, thanks for being with us tonight. We left off talking about the red tide of Clemson. The Orange Tigers.
I didn't even go there.
I shouldn't have gone there.
Well, you know what? If you would have blown the interview, I mean...
Oh, I have blown so many interviews, and we have the evidence posted on YouTube.
So you told us during the break that they won the national title twice while you were there.
Well, the first one was just before I went.
Oh, just before
And
you
that was
went?
while I was there.
Yeah. But they were probably still celebrating it when they went.
Absolutely.
You know, they won the title in the 80s. They had the Fridge. I don't know if you ever heard of him, William Perry. But
yeah, he played for Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, he played for the Bears later. In the Super Bowl, scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
He was a big boy. Really big boy.
Maybe why they called him
The
Fridge,
Fridge.
not in the fridge.
Yeah.
280 or something like that. Yeah, he was.
Yeah. And so Clemson, you finished that up. You'd mentioned along the way in your education you learned some Russian. Have you kept up on that? Do you use any apps to practice your Russian? Or?
When I first did, I did the 2 years at Colorado College, and then after that, while I was in California, I kept it up carefully, and then went back to University of Wyoming, and I did Russian while I was there.
Wow.
And I had studied Spanish before, and it had mostly disappeared when I quit using it. So I had faithfully did Russian lessons for 3 years after that. I faithfully did them 3 times a week to keep the Russian up. And then I had 4 babies in 6 years, and that was pretty much the end of any kind of discipline for my own, and it pretty much faded away. I got to go to Kazakhstan in 2016 when I was teaching there, and I used a little bit here and there, but it was very bad Russian.
Very bad Russian.
And when I went to Clemson, I was doing an English degree, but on the side I was taking Russian classes the whole time that I was there and improved it quite a bit. So I am now conversational if you speak slowly. So I'll speak to people and say, medlena, medlena, очень medlena, much more slowly. And then they have to be patient with me because, you know, I'm speaking Russian, but I am translating all the time. So it's not that natural that can just speak it.
Sure. Well, you know, there's a big Russian community in Denver.
Is there?
Yeah, there's also a big Russian chess community in Denver. My kid used to play competitive chess, and we saw some Russians. We also had a guest on the show who also in the military, Russian was his language. Wasn't that his language?
Yes, he was.
He was first assigned like Korean, and he traded it for a first round draft pick and to get into the Russian school.
Yeah, he was in the army, and he actually had used it once because they were having some peace negotiations. So, and him and his friend got in a snowball fight with some of the Russians. So yeah.
But he got the trade for the language because the person who wanted Korean so he could go marry a Korean woman.
It's amazing how this works out.
But we actually had a guest who was an immigrant from Russia.
Yeah.
And she lives in L.A. now.
Yeah, very excited to escape the Iron Curtain just so she could pursue her dream career of owning her own hairdressing shop. I mean, it's humbling to hear these stories of people that come from different countries to see how much we have here and the opportunities. Yeah.
I've got to use the Russian a number of times. Both times that I taught in Kazakhstan. When I was in Prague, the first time I was there alone and wandering about the city and discovered that even though Czech is written in Latin characters, a lot of them are the same as Russian words. So I found that I could figure my way around if I was reading signs and sounding out the Czech words and then finding where they had Russian roots or English roots or Latin roots. And I could kind of interpolate my way around the city using it there. And then most recently, I went to Turkey in the spring. And the first night that we were in Turkey, we wound here and there up through alleys and all kinds of places to get to our first Airbnb. And the guy who brought us in through 3 locked doors and back into the bowels of the building was trying to explain the particulars of the Airbnb. He was the host there. And he had Turkish and we had English and we were not doing very well. And at some point he decided that he could help us better in writing. And so he asked me for the pen on the table. And it turns out that the word in Turkish for pen is the same as the word in Russian for pen. And when he said the word, I just responded in Russian and they went, oh, sorry, Russian, and apologized. And he says, oh, Russian. We switched to Russian and did great.
So you both spoke Russian.
So the Turkish person speaking Russian, did he say where he got that from? Or
Well, it's actually more common. That's not very far across the Black Sea, and Russians vacation in Turkey a lot.
Well, on top of any of the
I saw in 60 Minutes last night, they apparently, the rich ones vacation in Cyprus.
Yeah, Dubai. Of course, all the old communist countries, they have their local language, but they were all taught Russian as a secondary language. And now, where they've been, free now for a number of years, there's more teaching as English as the second language. Yeah.
That switched almost immediately.
One of the things, my daughter wrote a paper on Poland. She said, everybody else in class is writing about Spanish, so I'm writing about Poland. Because we have Polish heritage. And so I read her report, and she said, yeah, they get a lot of their words from Russia, but they also are getting a lot of English words, not so much from the United States being there or anything. It's from the internet. I guess a lot of people look at the English language and learn some of the English language on the internet. So some of those terms that they get from that are sneaking into the Polish language. So it's interesting how the languages are working, like you said.
During your studies of Russian, either in school or on your own, did you find yourself becoming particularly impressed or in love with any areas of Russian culture that kind of surprised you? Like the Nutcracker? I'm not even sure if that's Russian.
Tchaikovsky was Russian.
Tchaikovsky, yeah.
I sort of fell in love with Russian culture when I was 10 years old.
Oh.
I was a gymnast, and in the 1972 Olympics, there was a little gymnast named Olga Korbut, who sort of became the sweetheart of the world and mine. And I really kind of fell in love with her, and I was a gymnast, and she kind of became, the icon. And it just led me to more and more I don't know, I think God put Russia on my heart at that point.
Sure.
Because by the time then that I made the decision to study Russian in college, that was fairly unpopular. It was Cold War, and people really questioned why I would choose to do that. And I had to justify it at those times. And then, of course, things opened up.
You just said, I'm going to be a spy. That would have got him to be quiet.
Yeah.
I did consider the Foreign Service for a time, but I never wanted to be a spy.
I don't know if I can take the pressure of being a spy.
Yeah, when I think of spies, I think of Spies Like Us. Have you ever seen that movie?
Well, that would be you two if you two were spies.
Yeah, I would not be a good spy.
It opened up, and then it became much more comfortable, and it became much more, people, it was just a curiosity that I studied Russian. And then now again, it's become very unpopular. And I I still want us to recognize that there are just Russians in Russia
Yeah.
who are trying to live their lives.
Sure.
And they are lied to by a great deal of what's being said over there. And
Sure.
But they're still just people living their lives there too. So and I am very much hurt by what's being done to the Ukrainians. And
Yeah.
I won't get into all the politics, but
No, I mean, worse.
I'm
worse.
frustrated by it
Yeah.
because I have a love for that part of the world, and I hate to see what's happening there.
You know,
And
but
we're gonna be back, and you wrote a book, and we're gonna discuss that book.
we are.
Yes. when we get back.
When we get back. And I will have more ID pictures.
All right.
Real people, real stories, real life. We're looking for guests. We're looking for you here on the third chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug, and how many different ways can we have guests?
Oh, at least 3. We could have them here in the studio in Colorado Springs. We've had guests all the way from LA on Zoom, and we have gone on location, and we got our 3rd one already in the planning phase.
Awesome. Send us an email and we'll get you on the show. We're back.
Welcome back.
We're back. Peter, Doug, and Charissa Fryberger. Thank you for being here. Now, I understood, is there any truth to the rumor that you wrote this book here that has your name on it?
Yes, there is.
A Breath of Fresh God. We'll put some slides up on the screen there in a little bit. And so I have a few questions. Did you know you were a writer from the time like you were young? Was this something you mentioned you thought about being a lawyer? Oftentimes those are people, excuse me, with a propensity to wanting to write.
I wrote my first book in a blue-lined notebook when I was in the 4th grade.
Did you get it published?
No. No, it was
a
just a
long
4th
book?
grade book. And
Was it long or short?
oddly, it's a little, in format, not in content at all, but in format, it's a little like this one. It was a whole series of different things, poems and essays and things that I put together.
Oh, wow.
I published my first poem when I was in the 7th grade.
Wow.
Just in a school paper, a school magazine. And by the time I was 16, I was a stringer for the local paper.
Is that like a reporter or an editorialist?
Yeah, kind of. I was living in Lyons, Colorado, and the Longmont Times-Call had stringers, kind of freelancers, that worked in the outlying areas. And so I wrote for the paper for a while. So I've just always written. And then I wanted to be a freelancer. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole process of sending it off to editors and having them reject it and send it back to you.
Yeah.
And I was afraid of it for a while. And I used to read the Writer's Market and just read it.
Yeah,
But I was afraid of it.
Yeah.
Until I had a college professor in Wyoming who handed me back an assignment. And all it said on the top of it was, mail it. And so I kind of started doing that. And so I freelanced for a while, for quite a while, really. And even after we were married, I freelanced full-time for a couple of years until we had children.
Wow.
So I found I
once
couldn't
in a while-
write between 3-minute intervals between I need a drink and I need a diaper change. So
Yeah. But so writing, part of the core of who you are and
Very
what you
much.
love to do.
I think in words.
You
So
think in
other
words?
people remember pictures. I remember words.
I remember numbers.
I just don't remember. So the book. Let's start with sort of the general theme or message of the book. What was going on with that, and then tell us the story of how you wrote it and sort of the journey after that.
Okay. The theme is about the fact that God is around us all the time, but we tend to forget. So it's about noticing God and catching a breath of Him. So it's like, going along through life and we get bogged down and things get stale and something happens and reminds us that He's there. It's like, oh, yeah, He's here. So it's about breaths, and it's a whole bunch of different kinds of pieces, but all kind of along that line of God is here and he's with us. And we need to remember that as we go through our lives, and that brings the wonder of him. We lose the wonder and we get into the sameness of things, and we forget that everything around us is miraculous, and that there's wonder in everything we do.
Do you find that taking a breath of God, so to speak, helps with a sense of gratitude as well?
Yeah, things happen and you're going along and, something can happen. Simple things, you make it to somewhere you're supposed to be that you were nervous about, or all of a sudden something works that wasn't working, and you can just take it as, oh, good, okay, I'm moving on to the next thing, or go, oh, yeah, thank you, and recognize that he's in everything that we do, that the world could be just chaos around us, and it's not, because of a whole series of miracles where he touches us every day.
That's a very interesting perspective. And this book you didn't complete in a couple of years. This was a little longer project?
People ask me how long it took, and it's very hard to decide where start was. The oldest piece in the book actually published in a magazine in 1991. But that's just one that I kind of pulled up. It really wasn't part of the process of writing the book. It's one I pulled up and added to it. The book kind of started to develop because as a homeschool mom, and then all of the extra teaching I was doing and running speech tournaments, life was crazy busy. And every now and then, David would let me run away from home, and he would take care of everybody for 3 or 4 days, and I would go off to a retreat center or a bed and breakfast somewhere. There's a retreat center in Beulah called the Easy Yoke Ranch that often let me come up, and I would be entirely by myself then for 3 or 4 days. And often out of that, God would give me a piece, and it would be an essay or a play or a poem or a story, and I'd work on it through that time and come out of it with a piece. And over time, that began to be a body of work that seemed to kind of follow around some of these themes. And the idea of the book sort of developed, but it was still just a bunch of pieces until I went to grad school. And I had really wanted to get an MFA, but ended up at Clemson, largely because of my daughter. And they don't have an MFA program, but they do allow for a creative thesis instead of an academic thesis. So I wrote that and brought some of these pieces together and wrote some new ones. And about a quarter of what's in the book was in my master's thesis. So, but it's not academic at all.
When did you get this published then? What year?
After I graduated, I worked on it over the next year and a half. Finished the manuscript up and had it edited, and then I had to learn how to be a publisher, and that was a whole nother set of skills to learn. So I published in August of 2021.
Wow, 91, technically 91 through 2021.
30 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
third year.
Really, it was more like
Off and
12
on,
to 21.
So this is a question we ask like pretty much every artist that's on the show, and much to the chagrin of Mr. Producer. That is, did you ever struggle like with writer's block? And if you did, how did you deal with it? Not counting the kid face.
That's one big block.
That's just a diaper block.
Yeah, the diaper block. Yeah.
I kind of write when God gives me something. So most of the time, I guess that happens sometimes, but most of the time I'm not sitting down saying, oh, I got to write something and get stuck. But rather, I will be... It comes sometimes. I go for a walk or I go for a drive, and an idea starts and the words start coming, and I'm literally writing paragraphs in my head, and sometimes I just have to stop and write them down so they don't get away.
I'm glad you stop rather than try and type while you're driving. That would be a little trickier.
Well, so a lot of
Especially if you have a
people.
typewriter in the lap. I mean, that's really dangerous.
Oh,
Well, yeah, or send yourself a text.
Yeah, send yourself a
That's
text.
still not really much better or pity.
So do you like keep...
Especially if it's one of Peter's vocal texts, because we don't know what those really say.
I had a trouble time. I had this Australian voice on Siri, and when I try to dictate, it would like type out something else, and my partners were always just saying like, what are you talking about? Then I'd read it, it's like, oh, I have no idea. Do you keep like a journal beside your bed or in the car in case something hits?
not that organized. It just happens, and I find something. Sometimes I tap it out on my phone if I'm just somewhere else.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And then, but sounds like you do take time to try and go to a place or be alone where you're more likely to hear inspiration. You kind of set yourself up for it that way.
Yeah, because I think it gets derailed. I think there probably would be lots of more ideas if I wasn't busy with other things. So that gets derailed by just life.
For sure. And how do any of the pets in your life influence your writing?
Probably not my pets. I guess my dogs appear every now and then in something. But more it's the natural creatures that catch me as I walk. I live in a lovely little mountain valley about a mile wide, and I walk around the valley often. And so I'm more likely to be inspired or caught by, the deer when they stand close enough for me to scratch their ears and talk to them, or the turkeys crossing the road.
You scratch the deer's ears?
I haven't yet, but we've been awful close sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Now, would this be considering something you'd call one of your squirrel walks?
No, those take place in cities.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, I was going to
that's
say,
very true.
and when we come right back, we're going to find out.
Well, wait a
What
minute.
is
Wait
a
a minute.
squirrel
Wait a
walk?
minute.
Oh,
Wait a minute. She's gonna read us a portion of her book during the break
oh, nice.
while we go upstairs and have some Czechoslovakian beer
And the rest of the chili.
That's right.
and the rest of the chili. We'll need
All
that.
right.
Then we'll get squirrely after that.
So we're going to next hear a essay from the book, and then we'll join you on the other side.
The Augustinian Ant. When we pass by something, failing to see it because it is so small that it has slipped our notice, we say that we have overlooked it. If, on the other hand, we pass by something failing to see it because it so completely fills our field of vision that it is without edges or parameters, could we say that we have underlooked it? I fear that often this is how we see or fail to see God. If he is indeed everywhere, then he is here, now, watching as we scurry around like unending lines of sugar ants, dutifully taking care of all the important and not so important details of our lives. Or is he? If I can pass through whole days without noticing him, how can I know that he's here at all? Perhaps I am just a sugar ant, among many other sugar ants, busying myself with tasks that have little significance beyond the meaning I give them during my own short life. How can I know that he's really listening when I pray? Certainly, I'm not the first one to puzzle over such a question. Great thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, Anselm of Canterbury, Blaise Pascal, and William Paley have struggled in trying to demonstrate God's presence. St. Augustine, who had great faith that God was with him, wrestled with many, many words in his attempts to understand and explain the God in whom he so passionately believed. Their struggles in confirming God's existence should come as no surprise. Indeed, if God is as resplendent, as invincible, as omniscient, as pervasive as Christians believe, human intellectual tools and perceptions are wholly insufficient for the task of perceiving, much less proving him. Even an intellect like Augustine's would be like a sugar ant who, in the course of his daily routine of carrying supplies back to his nest, bumps up against the toe of a man standing in his path. This minuscule creature cranes its neck, if ants have necks, and strains its eyes upward toward great heights to catch a glimpse of a titanic human toenail. Now, if that ant, with no more than its ground level perspective and limited experience, were to attempt to convince the other ants that this toenail, that they could barely see when the light was just right, was but the smallest appendage of a colossal and sentient being whose loftiness reached to the heavens, which of them would believe him? If, however, This Augustinian aunt were returning from a long and arduous climb up a nearby tree, on which he had ascended to great height to look this mythical human creature in the eye, perhaps his awe-filled account describing its sheer size and beauty and wisdom would prove more persuasive. If, in fact, many ants had taken such a journey in search of the human beyond the toenail and returned with similar stories of its astounding presence, would their combined testimony convince their fellows to at least consider the possibility that this mystical being did truly exist? I can no more prove God than Augustine or Anselm could, but I can add my voice to theirs and join those who have told this legendary story for millennia, describing the God beyond the toenail, into whose eyes we have peered, whose voice we have heard, and whose touch we have felt. But the being we describe is not only a distant and colossal presence. Though he is every bit as comparatively large and indescribable as the owner of the toenail our Augustinian aunt encountered, he is also nearby and familiar, as close as my next thought. If I am standing before my classroom teaching, he is listening among my students. If I'm writing on my computer, he's proofreading the text with me. If I'm having coffee with a friend, he laughs at my silly puns. If I'm doing laundry or washing dishes, he is sharing in my chores. Most of the time, I'm busy thinking about my daily responsibilities and the common minutiae of my life, and I don't notice that he's hanging around. He is so big and so constantly present that he continues to slip my notice, but that doesn't mean he isn't there, only that I have underlooked him.
Welcome back to the third chair. Like Peter, he doesn't tell me the whole break, and all of a sudden he just points at me. Hey, you introduce us
on the show.
We have Charissa here, and she just read. It was very nice, beautiful reading, and it's
From her book,
from her book, yes,
The Augustine Ant,
which I
page
read
12.
That's because you looked it up there.
Peter has learned numbers.
I have learned numbers.
Yeah, and it's after page 11. But I read the book this weekend, so.
And what did you learn from the chapter?
Why don't we let Charissa tell what the chapter is? But I did learn something. I have a note here about it because I had a perspective. It reminded me of something probably from philosophy. I don't know where it's from, but it's about elephants.
But elephants.
Yes.
An elephant and an ant. Okay. So.
I remember an elephant in the book.
No, it wasn't in the book, but it was something I learned when
Doug
I read.
added some things on the page.
When I
wrote some
when I
story.
read this, I thought of the elephant theory. So I'll talk about that.
Okay.
So, what was the overriding, if there is one, message that you wanted the ant chapter to inform people about? That's a terrible grammatical sentence.
Yeah, don't write that sentence ever.
Yeah, no, wait, that's yeah.
But it's easy for us to forget that God is there or start to doubt that God is there when we don't think we're seeing signs of him around.
Mm-hmm.
And to remember that even if we've underlooked him, he has not overlooked us. And he's still there and he's still with us. And even when we forget, he doesn't forget us.
It reminds me somewhat. There's an area called cognitive behavioral therapy that focuses on people's thinking errors, and one of them is all or nothing thinking or having a negative filter, where it's really easy to just see the negatives. And the fact is, most of us in life, there's lots of positives going on at the same time as the negatives. It's just so easy to not see them or remind ourselves of them. Sometimes we need to write down all the good things that are going on around us or God's blessings, rather than just focusing on the negatives.
Yeah. And I think part of that's natural because when things go right and they go the way we want them to, then we can just move on to the next thing and we don't have to do anything particular about it. When things go badly, or even if I knock over a glass, now I've got to go get a towel and wipe it up and clean it up, and so it causes me to have to do some things and think about it. So it's easier for us to think about, oh dear, I've got to do this and this and this because this is bad and all the negative stuff, rather than remembering the positive that just goes and moves smoothly.
Yeah, they say that we have 4 negative thoughts for every positive one.
I don't know how they count that. I don't know how I could
Just
count that.
A guy there with a clicker really fast.
See, that's why I statistics, because I worked a lot, because I was an auditor, we used statistics a lot, and now I look at statistics and I'm like, no. No, you just force that figure out. I mean, there can't be any scientific thing.
Like people say, 90% of whatever are usually.
Yeah.
Well, there is some valid statistics. We're not going to totally disparage the mathematical field of statistics.
Well, no, there's some valid statistics. But,
1 out of 2 hosts
but
for
the-
first year disagree with the statistics.
but I've seen statistics thrown out, and I found weaknesses on them.
Oh, totally. And you,
Easily.
yeah, and if you do it, see, we're practicing for the debate now.
No, the judge is good. But the the thing I got out of that, because you had the ant, and August, he was trying to look at God, and very intelligent man, and you compare like hitting God's toe.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought of the story of the elephant, and then there's like 6 men, and someone feels the trunk, and they feel the snake, and someone feels the tail, and they thought it was a rope, and someone thought it was a wall, the stomach area.
These were blind men. That was the other thing.
Oh yeah, they were blind.
Blind men, because if you could see them,
That reminded me of that story,
Yeah.
and then it's kind of got me into thinking. I thought a lot about this chapter, because then I got to see maybe people at different times see different types of gods coming. Because God. So sometimes if you do him wrong, he can be pretty ruthless. But he's a loving God. For the most part. And then sometimes I think he likes to play with people sometimes, because I'm sure he knew that Adam was running around worried. You talk about Adam and Eve, being naked. I'm sure he knew that Adam was there worried about being naked when he says, "Where are you?" He just wanted them to suffer a little more. He he plays game. And I always thought, you listen to Jesus and the Pharisees. I think Jesus was kind of like ticking him off a little just to get
He
him.
liked to stir the waters.
That's right. I think Doug and I have the same theory, the producer, on that. Is like, yeah, he was giving him a hard time, but, you know, it's part of his mission, but he was also like, I just want to give you a hard time. He has a good
You
sense
can
of
see the
humor.
disciples saying, "Hey, it's Wednesday. Do you want to heal this guy? Let's wait till Saturday. It'll be a lot more fun."
Yeah. We'll wait till it's Saturday, because we're really going to get a reaction from him.
I don't know if it's always quite that manipulative, but I do ask a couple of places in the book about, what does God's laughter sound like? And I think we forget the idea that
He does like to
God
laugh.
can laugh and that he laughs with us when we are having a good time.
Yeah, and he certainly likes to party. There's always talk of celebration everywhere. Yeah. Celebrate good times. Yeah.
So that's why I thought of the elephant thing when I was reading that, because I thought that was a good analogy. Like, okay, you're trying to find out about God, but you're like an ant seeing somebody's toe. You don't know what's above there, and that's kind of like us. Read it. You can read the whole Bible. You can study other things, but there's still a lot about God. We're still at His toe.
Yeah.
He's bigger than the whole cosmos.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the unknown, I'm sure everyone asks you this. What's the next project going to be? The next book? Is there going to be a next book?
Actually, there are several that are started. I'm a little frustrated. I'm finding I'm missing writing, because the writing I understood and wrote, and editing and revising, those are all very natural to me. The publishing part I could learn. I beat my head against a computer screen for about 6 months to learn Adobe InDesign so that I could do the interior design on the book, and had a little bit of help from a friend with the cover. A lady named Jenna Yeager helped me put the cover together. That all were skills I could learn. The marketing, on the other hand, is the hardest part. And I have been just trying to figure out how to publicize it, how to get it out there and let people know that it's there. And so I've been working on that so hard. I'm not doing a lot of writing. But the things that are there, there is a particular Bible study method that I use that I would like to do a couple of different books of the Bible and put together Bible study books for them. One being Song of Songs, and one being the Book of John, possibly later Acts. So that's one series of things that's in process. There was a medieval practice called the praying of the hours. So monks used to pray at different periods of time. It was 6 to 8 times when the bells would go off, and they would pause and do psalms and various praying.
I think some of them still do that.
Yeah, they do. I would like to put together a modern book of hours, where instead of all the old chanty stuff that we don't relate to really well now, it would be modern sayings and songs and things that would take just 2 minutes, and an opportunity to pray for one thing in your life, 2 minutes at various intervals during the day, because we all carry this bell around with us all the time, and you could set it and have it stop, and 2 minutes, pray and offer that up, and then move on with our day. So I want to write a modern book of hours.
That sounds good. We may find out more about that when we come right back, and we will also consider the question, will your book include instruction on chanting?
No.
My father plays dominoes. There you go, Father.
No chanting, Peter. No chanting.
Hi, I'm Peter from Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching, and as you know, I do help people with drug and alcohol recovery issues. I love to help people get better, but I also offer a variety of other services, including regular life coaching services. I've helped several people write and finish a book. I've helped a doctor that was in medical school graduate and then get into a residency. And I also actually have quite a background in mathematics, and I do some math tutoring for the GED as well as the ASVAB for those that are thinking about a career in the military. So my contact information is on the screen. Please send me an email or a text, and we can talk about some of these services and how I can help. That's Peter Gregg at Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching.
Welcome back. I'll teach Peter when he's asked a question. He should welcome people back.
Yes, I know.
Well, we have the lovely Charissa here.
Yes, educator, writer, and rumor has it a Doctor Who geek fan. Is there any truth to this rumor? No? But you've been forced to watch it.
My husband and my daughter watched it a lot, and I would sit down occasionally and watch it with them. So there is a piece in the book that talks about the TARDIS. So that does not mean that I understand the Doctor Who universe, but that I was kind of fascinated with the concept of the TARDIS and used it as an analogy in the piece.
Nice.
But they know much more about Doctor Who than I do.
Because the TARDIS is bigger in the inside than out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of my favorite fairy tales, The Hare and the TARDIS. You know I was going to say that.
And you like TARDIS sauce on your fish.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to be attacked evilly by Doctor Who fans.
So you've done some, you've done some serious writing, debating, coaching, all these things. Like, what do you read for fun? Do you read for fun?
I do. Actually, I'm starting to read more. Having been to graduate school, then there were a lot of things that, you read for school, which I actually really enjoy. The degree was in literature, so I was reading a lot of I love like Paradise Lost and Dickens. I really do enjoy those.
I love Dickens.
Mm-hmm. He's fun. He has such turns of phrase.
So now I can ask this question. What's your favorite Dickens novel?
Tale of Two Cities.
A Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah.
Dickens, is he?
Do you like the Dickens out of that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Dickens, didn't he write The Christmas Carol?
Yes.
That's right, that's my favorite.
Which is beautifully written.
That's because you were in The Christmas Carol.
Yeah, I was a dancing townsman.
But when you read the story, The Christmas Carol, you see how well it's written and the structure of it.
Yeah. I'm also reading more modern things. I've been reading the Outlander series and really
the Outlander
that.
series. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I've heard people talk about it, but I know nothing about it.
It was pretty big. I mean, there's
like 9 books this thick.
and there's TV series or
Yeah, my favorite sort of classic author is Arthur Conan Doyle and the whole Sherlock Holmes series. Very, very clever.
That got me in part with my love of reading, because that's probably the first classic author I read because of the Sherlock Holmes stories. And I talked to a lot of other guys, and it's like, the first thing I read was Sherlock Holmes.
I really relate to it because I have training in the medical field. So, Charissa, I know you also offer things like workshops and stuff like that. If people want to find out more about you and sort of some of the things you do, what's the best way for them to contact you?
I have a website you can look at. There's not a connect with it. There's just an email on there. So my website is at charissafryberger.com. And then you can email me, and I'm happy to email back. I love to get emails back and forth with people.
Yeah, we'll get that on the screen as well. And any other, you have the book for sale. Is it available in digital form on Amazon, or is it only hard copy? Tell us about that.
It is available on Amazon. Barnes & Noble has it. It's in a variety of places. It's in the Ingram catalog. It is available in a digital form. I don't know how much I should say this. I don't like the digital form very much.
Oh, you're so traditional.
No, and it's actually for a reason. It didn't translate really well to digital. At least where I had it translated to digital would have been fine if it was written in a traditional, just novel format, but I do a lot of kind of wild, weird things with formatting. And the formatting didn't transfer very well to digital.
Okay.
It's fine in the essays, it's fine in the pieces that are just written in paragraphs. Some of the pieces that are written in unusual ways, there's one piece in there that is written like a chessboard. So the
Yeah, that
whole
was
page and the
interesting.
words are a chessboard, and
Yeah.
it's pretty much unreadable in the digital version.
I bet, yeah.
So
Well,
I really like the
certain
print
things-
version.
Yeah, I think this book it is better to get printed because certain books I have a reading machine that I use and I got a lot of books on there, but certain books do not transfer well.
Sure, sure.
And I know that those 2 pages won't. Yeah.
Well-
it was fun to read that. Those 2 pages.
Well, we are fortunate to have you back next week for another show. So that is our treat. In the meantime,
Except when she has to stay in the basement for a week.
well, we'll bring down a cat. And please like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell icon so you know when we have uploaded another episode. Good night, and we'll see you all next week.
Which cat?
Espresso.
This is